This is the Scarpa Quattro Pro, and I honestly think this is the best ski boot right now.
The lightest boot in its category.
And I say that meaning like, I think it's the best ski boot for what I do.
Nico drop in.
If you're like my friend Vegard that you can watch in my new movie Ski coming in January, and you have like a goal of skiing 27 mountains in one push, you know, like crazy skimo stuff, this probably isn't the boot for you. You'd probably want to be in something like the Alien, you know, something that's super light on the uphill, but you are going to have a hard time skiing very aggressively or very fast on downhill. Or, you know, if you're as focused on the downhill as my buddy Jim, who, you know, brings a full-on racing boot when he goes ski touring.
Oh, you are doing the race boots?
I am.
God damn, you are a beast. Look at this walk mode.
Yeah, you're going to have more support in a full racing boot than you will in the Quattro Pro.
Performance is there. The crux being assembly, that's really scary actually.
Yeah, 10 miles of approach, and then you're like, oh, where's the screw?
Yeah.
To me, that's just like a compromise that I'm not willing to do in my day-to-day skiing or even in my like professional skiing. I want a boot that is great for the uphill, but also great for the downhill. And in that process of finding that boot, Scarpa Quattro Pro has been the best that I've found.
Be honest. Be
honest.
Yeah, I do see those astroturfing comments. I am a sponsored skier, and this video is actually sponsored by Scarpa. But this story didn't start with a sponsor deal. It actually ended with one.
I feel like this is coming to an end.
If you follow this channel the past 4 or 5 years, you see I've been skiing in the Hoji Free. Fairly low volume, like a tight fit, gives you good control over the ski, fairly stiff, good walk mode. I was stoked on this boot. I use this Hoji boot. Yeah, it's my do-it-all boot. Basically, this is the only boot I use throughout the year. But then I got the message that they were being discontinued. Dynafit was developing a new boot, the Tiger, which was supposed to be like a level up in terms of performance, but would still tour super well. So I was actually super excited to like come closer to that ideal of the true 50-50 boot, which is amazing on the downhill, but also for the uphill. But then this is my foot, and this is my foot inside the Tiger. You see all that air? All that air had to be filled with something. Like the way you control your ski is because your shell is in contact with your foot and then transferring that power to your ski. So for me to actually be able to transfer any power to my ski, I had to get my foot in contact with that shell. And to do that, we had to fill that with something. And in my case, that was a big foam liner, which made me feel like I was just kind of swimming in there, to be honest. And you know, the problem with making a ski boot is that everyone's feet are, you know, variations on the theme, but they're not exactly the same. It's really hard to make one shell that can fit all feet. On a race boot, you know, like what Jim was taking out into the mountain, they solved this issue by making this like big, burly, kind of fat shell, because you can have all that extra weight, and because you're not actually going to carry that weight up the mountain unless you're Jim. You're going to take a ski lift. If the shell doesn't fit a foot that's a little bit wider or has a bit of a higher instep, you can just carve out some material.
I start to grind.
And you can make room for that foot. But on a touring boot, weight is of course super important because you're going to be carrying that weight up the mountain as you move to the skiing that you're going to do. And so to save weight, you make these thinner shells that are way thinner and lighter than what you would have in a race boot. So there's no material to carve away. And so if you want to make a boot that fits every foot fairly comfortably right out of the box, you're gonna end up with a pretty spacious fit. You need that shell to be pretty big to accommodate, you know, like the bigger, wider foot sizes that are out there. And I think this totally makes sense from a commercial standpoint. Like most people, they go into a store, a ski boot is expensive, you put it on. If that thing doesn't feel like comfortable right away, you're not gonna buy it. So if you want to make a product that you can sell to the masses, of course you need something that you just slip on and it feels comfortable right away. But I think the big problem here is that comfort and performance, two very different things. My wool-lined Birkenstocks, extremely comfortable, but they're not very great for skiing.
Your fit, but my gosh, don't you know it?
So let's define fit. Like, what's a good fit? Like, for me, a good fit in a ski boot, I mean, for sure, it's a comfortable boot. It's a boot I can wear all day. It's a boot that I can buckle up medium tight and ride for longer lines. You know, if I'm doing a big line in Chamonix or in Lingen somewhere, you know, maybe riding in between rappels, you're spending a lot of time on the downhill. But then I also need to be able to buckle them like all the way, like really crank it. Not to the point where it's painful, but just to the point where it's like I'm in complete control. Where if I need to make like a tiny little precise adjustment on my ski, it'll do that immediately. And I need to be able to get my boots that tight, that well fitting to be able to ski the lines where I'm, you know, at my limit. Or just for like precise maneuvering, you know, like doing a butter or even like carving and just like really feeling how the ski is working. I want it to really, really sit like super tight on my foot. And I mean, it can be painful. If it's painful, it's going to take away from the sensation of skiing. It's going to take away from my performance. But it doesn't have to be like comfortable. It can be uncomfortable to the point where, you know, I feel like I want to unbuckle after like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, you know, the time it takes you to finish up that kind of skiing. Woo! To me, that's a great fit. That's a performance fit. In nature, things come with a bell curve distribution. You take the range of feet that are out there in the same length, which is like where you start off with your size. The volume will vary on a bell curve where most of them will be like sort of middle volume. Some of them will be lower volume, and then like some of them will be high volume. So if a boot fits the extreme end of foot volume, those higher volume feet, logically, it follows that they actually won't be what I just defined as a good fit for most feet. There will be empty space and we'll need to fill that space with something. This is the reason race boots come with a low volume fit adjusted outwards to accommodate higher volume feet. This is a fact of the ski boot world. You cannot make a shell smaller, but you can make a shell larger. I know it is true, you can't carve out parts of, you know, a touring boot shell. There's no material to do that, but there are other techniques. Like with the Hoji, it was really common to heat it up, punch out this instep to make it a little bit wider to accommodate for higher volume feet. And now, of course, this requires a bit of effort. This requires a bit of cash. You need to go see a trained boot fitter that has the equipment and the know-how to do this. You can't just do it yourself. And of course, I understand that, you know, when you make a ski boot for the masses, for the tourists that skis a week a year, who have no interest in you know, taking that much time to perfect their gear, of course you don't go down that route. But I think if you're making a high performance product aimed at like the dedicated skier, I think the only sensible way to go is to go the same direction that race boots go, where you go for a lower volume fit, then you then make higher volume if needed. And now I just want to like underline how important the boot is. You know, there's a lot of focus on skis. I focus on skis. Skis are sexy. Look at them. But the thing is, like, no matter how much you train, like no matter how hard you hit the gym before winter, no matter how many hours you spend perfecting your technique, the only way for you to translate all that, everything you're doing with your body into the ski is the boot. And so I felt I was like in a bit of a pickle with this situation. And at this point, I think the Hoji was like 4 or 5 years old. And when it came out, like there hadn't been a lot of competition in that segment. You know, in those 4 years, like a lot of brands discovered the whole like freeride touring segment because touring is nice. Even if you're skiing hard on the resort most days, it gives you just so much more terrain if you have the ability to just put on a pair of skins and tour a little bit. It's like, it opens up a whole new world. And another factor for me was that my skiing career had actually been going a lot better than I expected. Those 4 years that I had been skiing the Hoji, like I wasn't financially dependent on having a boot sponsor anymore. And I thought like, shit, fuck it. I don't want a sponsor. I just want to go boot shopping like I did before I became a pro skier to just see what's out there. And that whole mode didn't last too long, like not before long. Like a few brands got wind of the fact that I was shopping around for boots. I did get some offers to test stuff, disclaimer. But I did sort of like take a good look at what was out there on the market. And then I discarded a bunch of the boots that I didn't find interesting to try on my foot. And I tried these on my foot. The Atomic Hawks, the Atomic Backlands, the Dynafit Ridge, the Dynafit Tigard, of course, Technica 0G, the Technica Cochise, the Del Bello Lupo, and the K2 Dispatch Pro. And you know, some of them felt really amazing for downhill skiing, like the Atomic Hawks and the Del Bello. But then they were heavy and really had a bad walk mode, so they were not that great on the uphill. Whereas other boots like the Backland and the Ridge really toured amazing, great range of motion, but then they didn't really have that support and that good fit I was looking for, you know, on the downhill. I'd actually like to give a special shout out to the 0G in that category, which kind of did everything fairly well, but it didn't do it any better than the Hoji. So that was like early last winter, I was at a point where I was like, shit, I don't actually have a better solution than the Hoji. You know, I heard Seth Morrison, when they were discontinuing his favorite boot, the Flexon something, he just bought like 20 pairs and just rode it for many years until it became full tilt later on. Thought I might just do that. But then I was at my local ski shop, Tromsø Ski og Sykkel, mounting up some skis, and I met Nils, local mountain guide, and he, you know, I was telling everyone about my boot issues at the time. I felt like Cinderella's like evil stepsisters, where my foot wouldn't really fit any boots and they wouldn't do what I wanted them to. And he was like, have you tried the Quattro?
Good boots.
The original Quattro. Actually, I hadn't even thought about Scarpa as like a freeride brand, to be honest. I hadn't considered them in that category at all. So I was skeptical. I didn't think this would be a performance boot, but then I put it on my foot. It was amazing, like amazing in the sense that it gave me more support for my skiing than the Hoji in like a shell that fit amazing right out of the box. I didn't even put in the new liner there, and it also just toured amazing. Like the walk mode is just insane. Like the range of motion was nothing like I'd ever had before in like a high performance freeride boot. Woo! And I was super stoked. I was telling all my friends, but then they started falling apart. Like landing a little backseat, walk mode lever just snapping in half.
I knock skoen!
After just like a few days, actually. And I mean, I'm a fairly big guy. I'm like 86 kilos, 189 centimeters. That's this much in the American system. But still, it was just a few days and like, this wasn't good. But at the same time, like the performance I was getting out of the boot was so good that I was like the thought of going back to something else was like, ugh, really do not want to. And actually to change this out is like a super easy fix. It's just 2 screws. So I got in touch with Scarpa locally and was like, hey, can you just like send me a few more walk modes and I can just have a little stash so I can like swap them out if they keep breaking. But they got back to me actually from Italy, my new dear friend Margarita, and was like, you know what? We're actually making a new boot. We are making the Quattro Pro with a stronger walk mode. Boom. Got the Quattro Pro. I was stoked. A bit of a stiffer cuff as well as the stronger reinforced walk mode with like an extra lock, so there's no way for it to pop out. Not that I actually had an issue with the old one popping out, but I was like, okay, let's go. I was skiing again, and then I broke, with the stronger lever, I broke where the lever connects to the cuff. Essentially, this walk mechanism was fixed by this little threaded insert. It's too loose. But now I was already in touch with Scarpa, and after a bunch of back and forth, and I wasn't even on the athlete roster at this time. Like, we had no formal connections. We were just like DMing on WhatsApp. I had my own theories, and they were so responsive in the product development. Like Julia, one of the engineers, would like machine new metal parts that I could try out to fix it. Like when I thought I had a solution, I got the parts. Turned out the problem wasn't what I thought, but a faulty mold. So like when they cast the lever, it was like the hole for the screw was too tight, so it didn't screw all the way in. But that actually fixed it. Did some lab tests on it. How much impact did you test with?
250 joule of impact force. Okay.
Which is a lot of force. The shell breaks before the lever now, and the shell is super strong. We tested 2 different materials. This is the strongest one. It holds up really well. I haven't been able to break it, and I haven't been able to break the boot since we fixed that problem. No matter what I've thrown at it, it is now not only like the best performing uphill downhill boot I've tried, but also durable, which is of course a necessity. I hate being in the mountains with gear that breaks. And at this point, you can tell, right? I was Jack. on the back of the Titanic.
I'm involved now.
Scarpa asked me if I wanted to be the face of the Quattro Pro, and here we are. Now, they didn't ask me to make this video, that's all me, and I wanted to do that when I started this journey, way before I got in touch with Scarpa. I wanted to document this and just see where it led me, and I wanted to share that with you. I found it interesting. What's going on in the boot world? And now, I'm really not saying that any of these other boots are bad. They're not bad boots. They're all like well-crafted pieces of equipment made by people with a passion for skiing. I think this segment of like the freeride touring boot is, maybe because I'm a narcissist and care about what I do myself, but I think it's one of the hardest like areas of ski gear development right now, because you're trying to do two separate things that are so different. You want it to walk like the boot that Vegard wants, but you want that race boot performance that Jim wants in the same piece of equipment. That's incredibly hard to do. All these brands have chosen different strategies attempting to do that. In this case, I found that Scarpa strategy was the one that I liked the most, the one that worked best for me. I think it's just better to be transparent about the process that got me to where I am, rather than have you all guessing. And I would just like to really, really underscore, I have all the respect in the world for all these boot manufacturers. I have all the respect in the world for Dynafit. I really appreciate what you guys have done for human-powered freeride skiing the past decade, and the support that I've gotten from you guys. Thank you. So what's the deal? Why is the Quattro Pro the best ski boot right now, in my opinion? And like the easy explanation, it's like, and this is my explanation to be honest, is that it's just simply the best performing boot on the uphill and the downhill that I've ever used. The long version is, I mean, for the downhill, I think my biggest eye-opener was riding the Del Bello Lupo with a zip fit liner one day, which is like an extremely heavy setup. The Lupo itself weighs like 2 kilos and the zip fit liner is this many kilos. And then I rode the Quattro the next day, and to me, the way I skied, it felt better. The Quattro has great flex. My friend Stine is Shift, amazing skier. Watch him here. He described, you know, the flex of touring boots, he would say it's like crispy. If you tried like a bunch of touring boots, you know this like kind of hard, like it's stiff, but it's not like plush and like progressive, you know? The Quattro has a really nice supportive flex where it's like, it's stiff enough to do all the kind of skiing that I want to do, but it's not stiff in that like crisp, nasty way. And of course, I mean, it's not as stiff as Jim's race boot, but I'm not a downhill ski racer. Like, I'm not trying to like jam my edge into ice at 150 kilometers an hour down, you know, a downhill course. This was the most demanding run I did last season on like refrozen crud ice, and in no way did I feel like the Quattro was holding me back or not supporting me to the level that I needed.
Oh my God.
I'm a fairly big guy, and I found that this gives me more than enough support. Like on this 3 here, like classic Nico style, over-rotating a little bit, not perfect on the landing. Still, there's enough support for me to just land and ski out the way I hoped for. And I think that's really the sign of a good boot. Like, you can ski anything in a bad boot. Like, it's possible. But when you need a good boot, you'll notice if you are in a good boot. There is a beefy power strap, and the buckles can be moved around to like accommodate a lot of volumes of feet. I've moved mine up 1 notch here, and you can actually change the power strap too. All the parts that are possible to do it with are screwed on, they're not bolted on. So you can change like all the straps, all the buckles, the walk mode you can change. If you're actually in the old Quattro and you are struggling with that braking, most of my friends haven't struggled with that, I'm a fat guy. But if you are, you can actually just get this new one and replace it. Another big factor for me is the forward lean. Like this comes with 3 settings, 15, 17, and 19 degrees forward lean. I put it on the 19 degrees one. I like a lot of forward lean. It just makes it feel more aggressive and stiffer than I think it maybe actually is. But of course you can have it at 15 if you like a more upright position. I'm still in the stock liner, which is also kind of unheard of for me. I normally buy an Intuition wrap liner for all my boots, or like a zip fit. And I know I keep going out about like punching shells. That was actually like a last resort sort of thing you do when boot fitting. With an Intuition liner, you gain another 7 millimeters of space if necessary by heat molding them. And you can just do that at home. And of course, I put a custom footbed in there. And also, of course, yes, this is like a narrower performance fit. It isn't for everyone. If you are a skier that values comfort over performance, what Scarpa has done, what a few other brands have done too, and I think that makes a lot of sense, is you make the F1 car, and that's like all out. And then you make like all the everyday daily drivers, which would be more like a Mastrala, which is a higher volume, lower flex boot that has more of that comfort focus. Still a great boot, but like maybe not for skiing in the way that you would on the Quattro Pro. And then of course, for the uphill, walk mode. This is me and my friend Finn comparing range of motion. And Finn is in a way lighter, like more uphill oriented boot. The walk mode on this boot is insane. It is by far the best range of motion that I've ever experienced in a freeride boot. And I think what's really important there is that, you know, there's a lot of like stated stats on range of motion, but this one has a great range of motion, but it also has very little friction through that range of motion. So you're not expending energy like trying to gain that range of motion because you want that energy for going uphill. A lot of boots have like a huge range of motion, but you're not gonna be able to use it because you have to like push through it. That's not the case with the Quattro Pro. Go to a ski shop, try it on, you'll feel the flex, the fit, and also that amazing range of motion for the uphill. Full sole, but it does have a grip walk system, so you can use them in grip walk alpine bindings. I do that. If you're a boot manufacturer, you're making a ski boot, just put rubber under the whole thing. There's no reason not to. If you're walking on boulders, if you're even walking in stairs at the resort, like this is where you want the rubber, so you can actually like balance on the middle of the foot when you're walking over hard pointy things like rocks and stairs. A last note that the shell is made of plant plastic, Pebax. I think that's kind of cool. I get a lot of shit for trying to lower emissions and like talk about climate and trying to do something to save winter. I like snow. And everyone's like, oh, but all your products are petroleum based and made out of oil. This is not made out of oil. It's made out of plants. Ha. And it still performs amazingly. The environmental acts that work are the ones where you make a superior product that is also more friendly for the environment. Good work, Scarpa. I mean, I realize this is super strange, you know, me like doing a review of my sponsor's product. Of course, it's gonna appear biased, even if the story did start off with a different sponsor. But all I can say is that I'm just striving to have the best experience on snow and be transparent about the sponsors that I have. I have a law degree. If I wanted to get rich, I would go work corporate law. And that's that. I believe this is the best ski boot right now.